Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. I was saying I think that this gives us at least odds of getting back here for maybe tomorrow, not today. Looks like we're going to just doji on the session today. When I measured some of these metrics too, you can see that there's a lot of overhead around the 30 area. Do you see that? When we're measuring between here and here, there's a lot of overhead basically between these overnight lows. So right in here, this is the area we talked about last night. I did prefer that we closed at 6699 yesterday, and we didn't. We closed closer to 9697, which was the bear zone. So I think it's kind of obvious that we had this breakdown already in store. On the report, I did mention that if they do break these zone areas, we have odds of getting back to, like if they break beneath the channel, which was the 3-3, 3-8, 4-4, 4-6 had a lot of confluence. Okay, if they were to break these areas here, we basically had odds of getting back into the zone. Okay, so this 06-08 area was pretty big the last time. So we already knew that there was odds that they would push us back to zone areas here. And first thing I noticed last night was that they were holding or trying their best to hold the 3-3-3-4. Do you see that? But they couldn't quite retract 8-8. So let's just mark 8-8-8-7 on here. You see like these zone stalls here? Do you see this? They were trying so hard to avoid going back to this zone down here, but then couldn't re-enter 6-6-8-8. So I already knew that there was odds that they could basically get it back to this prior zone beneath. So if we kind of reset this and just take a quick look, it's pretty obvious that they were trying their best to hold here. Do you guys see this? Overnight? Do you see how hard they were trying to hold this? And this is after they tested those areas we talked about in yesterday's stream, around 6706, 6708. So they did test there. They weren't able to close above 99, unfortunately. Okay, came back, took it to that 3-8 area, stalled 6-8, took it back to 3-3, and then kept stalling. You can see like these stalls at the means at 6-3. This was really bearish right here. This right here. And then they brought it back, came back around, held the means at 5-2, so that was good. And then held 6-4, 6-3, but then couldn't quite break 8-8. Okay, so these were stalls of like getting into this zone up here, which implied that if they were to come back and retest 6-6-3-3, they're likely not to hold. But we didn't actually open there today. We opened at 6-6-5-6, so we didn't really have a chance of staying stuck in this this zone anyway. And they held 8-8. So something I did want to note too is, you know, these 3-4 point offsets, maybe they end up pitting us 3-4 points beneath yesterday's close. If that makes sense. I also really liked, so this should be closer to here. I also really liked this neutral zone hold right here off 14, especially when they came back here and they retested 5-8. Okay, so I think had they retested 6-6 area up here, 6-8, I feel like we would have probably held closer to 2-2. Do you guys see these offsets here? I just want to show you. Do you see this? Like, had they maybe tested closer to here, I think we would have held off 2-2, and I think we would have had probably a higher chance of already, you know, breaking this range in here, because basically when they stalled, this was like a 66 point stall off 2-2, or you can think of it as like 72 point stall here, and we're currently stalling 88 to 96 points. You can't extend to 107, 115, 128 points unless you take out that 88 to 96 point range, which is where they're currently stalling. Okay, so far some reductions here ahead of 258 and 3 o'clock. So these were the odds that we had. For this afternoon. So that's not looking like they want to engulf that. They did stall exactly at that high range too, I noticed, like right at 8,550. So at this point, if they can't engulf that, remember what I said, that it's better that they just doji and then try to maybe break up during this last hour here. But in order for that to be the case, we'd probably want this to close. We probably would want this to close red. If they can't get back over 7,374, we want this candle to close red, okay? So, because that's going to apply some pressure, because then otherwise we could see that 3-bar down reversal into the last hour, okay? So these are just the potential probabilities here. And it's a pretty big period to try defending ahead of 258 and 3 o'clock. So we're going to see what kind of odds we end up having here. They're making this very conflicted. So what do you guys think? Do you think that they're going to try pushing this back and taking it back over 7.4 to keep it 50-50? You think that they're going to keep it red and then to take it back green? You think they're going to take it slightly green to basically take it back down? We're kind of limited on the range that we have anyway, since it's stuck between 6688 and 6699. So it's not like there's too much range back above anyway in between here. If they're going to try breaking this, they really have to push right now, okay? So we don't have very much time either. So like your 5-7 stick, 5-6 have to be some breaking sticks, like ideally back over 7.425 at a minimum and over 7.8. Does that make sense? Otherwise, you're going to have a potential 3-bar. Like having this pierce is better than having like a reversal pattern set up again. We do have odds for 3 o'clock too. So if there's like a minute or two delay here, that's fine. And there was an odd at 3:01. So very, very, very important period here into the close or into the last hour of the session today. What do you guys think? See how they're basically just hovering it? Wow, right at 7.425. That's insane. Do you guys see this? Look at these structure holds. And look at that close. They're keeping that odd in play. That would keep us in play through to what was that time? 2:32. Okay, but how important do you guys think it is that they immediately push here post 258 to negate the odd of this being a reversal pattern? They just tagged the line. Like, look at that. Do you see that? That's actually insane. Do you see what they did? Final seconds? That was the final 2 seconds. Okay, so they're trying their best to defend this area here. So I would say that the 58 through 593, 301, pretty important period. They don't have to necessarily take out highs, but at the very least, try coming back to that 7882 area to mitigate some of this risk that they now face. Okay, so where's 5.8? And that also could form some of these nice star-like reversal patterns that we had on watch earlier around the 21, and this runs till 2.7, so 327 if they take out this range. I didn't really look at anything past that, but most of these odds were right at 3 or like just after 3 when I looked at some of these structures. And 327 was a very common flip today too. There's the 7880 retest here. I just want to see if they try tagging 82, 8250, because this was our 66 to 68 point range off that higher low and an 88 point range off lows, okay? So this is an 88 point range here, especially at 3 o'clock. Can someone document this? This is a very, 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 very calculated time and price, okay? And that is very intentional too, especially right at 3. And then there, I put a odd in here. This isn't a flip. This is a calculated time at 3:01. Because basically if they can hold that 58% range, okay, right here, which was the 2425 at 5.7 ahead of 5.8, and then push 5.9 and 3, they have an odd to try retesting 8.550 as early as 3:01, okay? If they stall here at 3:01, that's what's going to keep us continuously delayed through like 3:11, 3:16, 3:27, and the 3:30, 32 periods that we talked about. And I'm not surprised that that would be the case, because if they're trying to keep us basically stuck until the close so that they can pin us, it would make sense that they might not try pushing range too much. So immediate reduction stick here. We'll see if they try pushing on the 30-second interval. Does this help you guys understand the PA a little bit better, at least? Like this period here between 5.5, 5.6, it was quite crucial that they try turning this around. Otherwise, it's going to negate all odds until for the next, at least for the next half hour. And remember what I drew earlier too? This is exactly how it's panning out. So we can kind of watch to see if... I usually give it the first 5 minutes in general, so I mean, it's not that we can't watch that, but today's odds are a little bit different than standard. I kind of figured that they would keep this stuck until later in the session, only because they might want to pin the close. So to me, it made sense that they probably want to stay stuck until imbalance prints, you know, like maybe on these time frames here. Do you see what I mean? So we'll see. But this obviously makes it hard to hold through, which is why entries in these areas here were so important this morning. Especially when they started to limit range. Oh. My alerts are not letting me... Oh, finally. This was not letting me edit this. That's exactly how we drew this too for the 58 to 3 o'clock period, which is hilarious. But stalling here at 3 definitely implied that they're gonna keep this stuck again or sideways. A lot of these are linked to opening range too. Do you see that? Like close to 6, 6, 9, 6, 7, 5. Do you guys see these reductions here? Because basically what they're doing is they know if they were to push range this early that they can already meet end of day conditions too soon. And what happens when you have too much time on your hands and you've already met price sometimes? Especially if you widen the range. And that's what they could be trying to avoid. What do you think they keep reducing range for, guys, and keeping it so back and forth? Yeah, pin the close, but also, ironically, it could be to reduce volatility too. Because if you take it back to here, let's say, okay, which is still a bear zone, right? Sometimes you have to go higher to go lower, and sometimes you have to go lower to go higher, correct? So this could be a go higher for them to push it back lower scenario if they stalled or something like that. So they could just be trying to avoid that. I didn't really want to stream the close just because I figure this is going to be kind of boring, but oil names doing well again today. This engulfed fully almost on XOM, so this was a really good day trade if anyone looked at the oil stocks that I had mentioned. Crypto names also saw a bit of relief finally. What's something though that you guys think is important during this period? So earlier I had mentioned that during this period here between 2 and like roughly 218, okay, we couldn't really break this low. Between this period here and this period here through 36, we could take out the low because they could make a bit of a star-like reversal, right? Which they tried, or an engulfing scenario, whatever. Between this period here, though, okay, what do you think would be important to do? Like basically between 3 and let's say 3:30. So here you really have to sustain. Here it was okay if you broke as long as you like kept above 5.8. What do you think you'd have to do at this point in the day? And pay really close attention. And it could be hard to do since the ranges are so tight. Above 7.5? No. We're not even near 7.5 to be sustaining 7.5. Where would we have to sustain? Probably need to try holding around this 6.6, 6.4 area, okay? I don't really think this would be a time of day to be breaking or triggering these past lows or something like that. Some of those candles closed at 3.11 and 3.16, so I was just going to watch to see what they do during that period. Basically see if they can try retracting. So now you're not wrong about that, like to get back over that 7.4, whatever that area was. Okay, yeah, maybe between here and here. Okay, but the question was where in terms of sustainment versus like retracement. Because where you sustain at a specific point in the day matters too. Could they also just keep us stuck in these areas here, like in an 88-point range if they wanted to, and doji us on the session like this? Like technically this is enough to be considered a doji if they're not going to hammer the session or like pierce it. I know this range kind of sucks, but it was good for some back and forth. Like as long as you knew like the areas to trade within. It doesn't necessarily have to be 6-6 Slipperman. It's mostly just above like these areas here, which makes the range very, very tight, because I feel like as soon as they break down this range, and it's not very much, you see how it barely held? I don't know if you see that. Okay, that puts a lot of pressure, okay, especially during this period now at 316. So there's like a slightly higher low by like 0.25 or 0.5. But how important now is the pressure to try to retrace, because they're not holding by very much range. Like that's still very, 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 very close. What do you guys think? Would we want to see some stick breaks like these? Maybe in the next few minutes here? Especially post 316? Yeah, so probably like right now, okay, like right away, so that we could avoid this volatility here, or at least try to limit it just a tiny bit. And it doesn't have to be much, because we don't really have odds until closer to 326, 27, 30 anyway, but at least if they try to like move away from this 6.3, 6.4 area, like back over 71, 73, 74, even if it's back to like this mid-range here. Otherwise, I think that risk is going to start to increase. Because we're not going to see range breaks unless either end breaks right now, which is basically 8.8 or 5.8. That's the first break here, guys, of that 6.3, so volatility can start increasing a little bit. And this is off like that 2 p.m. period here. A lot of those candles that I was watching earlier kind of like bearish engulfed, or like made really similar type ranges, and that's usually what happens when you stall the exact spot. Like you see how they stalled 8,550, 8,550, 8,550. It gives you odds of coming back to that low. But that being said, it could still give you that odd of coming back and doing the same exact thing, which is even if they take out this low, they could take it out just slightly and then bring it right back around at 35 till close. There is a bit of a bear flag though on the 34-minute that we were watching earlier that runs till 32. So just something to be mindful of here if they don't start retracting this back. When does that 34-minute flip? 32. And most of these were 27. That's not very much time. Like 6 to 11 minutes from here. So if they really want to avoid, okay, before we could afford having these engulfing type patterns, right? Do you think we could afford it at this point in the day though? Like to bearish engulf this and then enter 335 till 410 with a setup like that? Probably not, just because the risk is a lot higher. I would say that it's pretty important that they now try keeping this in an inside. Watch the 40 minute, actually 40 minutes pretty nice, just to see if they could stay within this bar. But that is going to apply pressure of retracting by like that 320, 318, 320, 21, 24, like those earlier periods ahead of 327, 330, 332. Where do you guys think they'd have to retract this back by 327? Because we're at risk of taking out lows till 330, 332. Which so far, this doesn't look super constructive. Well, did you guys even measure any ranges, or are you guys just putting out random numbers? This is a 22-point break right here. They haven't closed beneath, but they definitely broke a little bit beneath. Normally you always want at least 6.5 points. Ideally 12, 13. So like, yeah, back to that 7.4, 7.5 area. It's probably best. I think 7.2 is too low. That's not high enough. Mm, 24 stick is backtesting. Or snack, I think you have the wrong numbers, because we're not anywhere close to 67.30s or 6797. 324 getting a retest here ahead of 327. This is crucial because this is what could break down structure, but they could also take it out. And like I said, if they want to do that engulfing scenario, they would have to take out that range ahead of 327 to give an odd of coming back and retracing, which could imply some volatility here. Yeah, I don't think that we want it back to the 30s though. I mean, that depends how low you're going, Slipperman. Because if you fully break this range and you take out 5.8, which they're doing right now, I mean, to an extent, like I wouldn't really want to break the means, especially since these areas were already some structural supports back here on overnight anyway. But it made sense that if they're going to break it down, it would probably be if they failed to retrace between 321, 324, ahead of 327, 332. So structural breakdowns happening on that stall of failing to retrace back over 7475, especially ahead of time. And that being said, this could still keep this bear flag in place. So this is where we have some risk now with this that runs till 32 and that runs till close. That's still a lot of time for this. So if they're going to try saving this range, you'd probably have to try protecting at least this mid bar right here and then retracing back at least through here. But that's a lot of pressure in the next few minutes because that's not very much time. And you can see how it's aligned with that 7-4 area too. That's what would make this a potential engulfing period for that second half. So this was a scenario I didn't want to play out because it just adds too much volatility. Okay, so this is one scenario, or they could have that continuation into the close, which would, this would be the bearish scenario if they didn't retract or try saving range in these next 3 to 6 minutes. I don't consider that bottoming. I think we're hitting close to that 34-point range that we talked about. Yeah, we just broke it. This is what could take us back into that channel. Well, it was pretty obvious though when they broke right here. Remember how we really wanted to try sustaining 6-3, and then they didn't push enough right here, so it was right in this range right here, and then no follow through at 301. I still think that they play games though and tried breaking that range back into that exact same area, which basically just kills off premium on both ends into the close. But that being said, this period between 327, 330, 332, you have to break back up. Otherwise, I would say that they're going to keep us stuck in this channeling range right here. Okay, so probably have to get back at least to whatever that 6-3 spot was right here. Or is it at least here? Ideally back over here. And this doesn't really do anything. It just kind of gives you odds of getting back into this exact range that we were playing or trading within for the last like 2-3 hours. Does that make sense? So I do want to avoid the channel just because I feel like that will limit some of the risk here. And I think the fact that they failed 32 points or 34 points is what's putting us at a bigger risk, but from open to close they haven't. So if you can see this from highest close, highest open, they didn't. But do you see that little buffer right here, guys, right here where they failed? Just by a little bit, not by a lot, but 36.75, 34.75 versus 33.25, 31.75. That's where pressure gets applied though. So right at like the 330, where's the 327? 332. 336. And that's where you'd need at least back over that 6.3. These areas here. Does that help? I don't really know how else I could explain that. It's kind of like it's risky, but this isn't confined. And it makes sense though, because we broke over 88 points off those lows down here. Okay, by like 93 or so, and same with like highest open, highest close. It's kind of the same idea. Do you see what I'm saying? Like 1.75 points, 2 points, 3 points. So how important do you guys think 3:32 to 3:36 p.m. is, especially in terms of like mitigating some of this risk into the close today? They took out that low range, by the way, or held off 328 versus 327. This is where premiums on both ends start getting killed off too, by the way. I'm going to take a quick break, guys. I'll be right back. All right, let's see what they do the final 10. This would basically be them trying to avoid a 44-point break, I think it is. Yes. Because 44 points is like right around here. Usually if markets break, they usually break a 43 to 44 point threshold. So 43 points is exactly this 664475. The risk was down to like that 4375 and that 41 area. I think we set off that lower high. The idea was if they want to avoid that, they have to push at least back to that 5758. Bigger stick breaks would have been to 63, which didn't really seem that likely. And this is basically just to kind of try keeping this afloat back in this area here into the close. But to do that, they have to try avoiding this channel area beneath 4344 and retract over 63 to get it back into this area here, basically 66, 68, 71, 74, 78, 81, whatever the case is, to give it that doji on the daily. And maybe just avoid some extended volatility. They basically killed premiums on both sides though, so. And we'll have to see if they have enough momentum to push, I guess, the 5-4, 5-5 sticks. SPY is trading close to 662. SPX, I think, was trading close to 666.35. So SPX would be a core hold. What do you guys think? Where do you think they take this back to? Who here thinks they have odds to push back over this area here into the close? Who here thinks they keep it stuck in this range in here? Who here thinks that they actually have odds to get it all the way back to 8182? You can't get 8182 though, Slipperman, unless you take out at least 63, 64. You know what I mean? At least before the final 5. You have to also be realistic about the trades too. So the fact that they stalled 5758 here, they're already limiting it a little bit. So now you have pressure to at least break 63, 64, probably as early as like 54. Don't just have false expectations because it's something that you want to see. Actually think about the conditions that have to be met for those to even be a probability. For starters, you probably would have wanted to sustain 55.2. So unless you get like some crazy stick break like this, okay, at 5455, there's no way you're going to retake 7882, at least not in real time. You'd have to have like a very, very constructive stick at 5-4, over 6-3, probably back over 6-6. And then 5-5 would have to be a really big stick that pushes back at least over 7-2, 7-4. You also have to remember too that they saved a tiny bit of risk into this close, right? So they still left this area here. And they're still leaving this area here. That's basically equal on both sides because you're not going to get range breaks unless you take out 6-3, and you still have room down to 4-1, 4-2, 4-3. Do you get what I'm saying? And look at what they did at 5-4. They're basically stalling this here. That doesn't look very constructive to me. The only thing that they could do though is 5-5 could try getting back over 5-8 just to at least give an odd into the close for like these areas here, if that makes sense. But you'd have to have some sort of a range break here. Like it's barely moving. And it just seemed like that's what they were going to do, was kill these premiums into the close. All right, guys, pin the close. Where do you think they're going to take this to? They basically limited risk and reward on both sides. Where do you guys think that they're going to take this to? There's that 4-2-4-1 back test here ahead of 359. This is where risk could heavily increase into the close here if they fail these areas, especially that final minute, because this would be a 44-point break. That's what could really trigger those bigger dumps into the close, guys. So just be very, 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 very careful here. Okay. That could be actually a really good end of day dump. They're trying to break it down here into the close. That could give us those odds of retesting those 66.20s. I don't know if any of you guys tried shorting into the close on these last few minutes. I noticed right when 5.5 didn't retract, that they're probably going to at least test 4.1. There was also some odds till 4.06. And now these aren't really confined ranges, so are you seeing this dump, you guys? Wow. What a short into the close, guys. I just caught a 200% move on that. Holy. I knew that they were going to dump it like that. Look at that 2-2 break, guys. They have until 4.06. That's a 66, 68 point move back down because they failed 44 points. Wow. That really helped make up for the shitty range this afternoon. Insane. Those contracts went from 15 cents to $1. I covered at 60 and 85. I guess I could have left them a little bit longer, but it looked like they were going to go pretty deep in the money. Did you guys see that? So I didn't really think that they, like, once you break 44 points, I highly doubt that they were going to stop that, especially since it was right at 358.59. So this is where I figured they could try pushing maybe a 66, 64, 68 point move. Yeah, it might not be a bad call to cover because ranges weren't defined today, right? Because you know how they did like 89, 90, 71, 72. So they might not give like the full 66, 68 point range. I covered too. I covered actually a little bit early. But anyway, really nice dump into the close. We'll see if they can bring this back over, at least back over 664138. There's still some room back to 6621. Did any of you guys capture that dump into the close on those contracts? I just played some SPY contracts so I could cover them after the bell. I did the 660s off 20 cents. They hit just about 96 cents, I think, on that stick right here. Okay, anyway,